It is that time of year where I'm having an incredibly hard time finding a time to film when there is actual daylight, and it is not happening. So congratulations, we are going to be getting weird, crappy lighting that is terrible to try to color correct after the fact. Bear with me. Hey, what's up? I'm Allie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you about most of the things that I read in January. I did read 7 things in January, and I do think it is one of the best reading months that I have had in a really long time. Not in just like the moments that I did read, I couldn't stop reading, but also in the type of things that I was reading were really suiting my taste this month. However, even though I read 7 titles, I can only really tell you about 4 of them. I am going to mention the other 3 at the end. However, they are for a video that I'm doing that's not going to be out till probably mid-February, where I read my booktube besties' favorite books. So I don't want to spoil how that turns out, so I am going to give kind of a general gist of what those books are about, and then y'all make sure to look for that video when it comes out if you want to know my thoughts and feelings on those. As always, I have timestamps listed down below, so if you are looking for my review on a very specific title, you can just go ahead and skip to that for your ease of access. You don't have to sit through all of them if you don't want to. You really don't. It doesn't hurt me. So right off the bat, the first thing that I ended up reading for the whole year was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. I've really enjoyed a lot of Christina Henry's writing in the past, especially when she writes these like modern twisted fairy tale inspired stories. This one, however, is quite unlike her other stories, I feel, because it doesn't really have those established origins to work off of. This is kind of an original all on its own to her. Now, this is about a woman and her husband who live out like in the middle of nowhere, and they lived a pretty strict life, and then one day she hears and sees these tracks of like this massive monster. So she goes back and tells her husband. They go and investigate. Shit is fucking creepy, okay? Along the way, though, they see that there are some humans actually like hanging around, and she is like forbidden from interacting with them. She is forbidden from leaving this place. So this kind of like sparks some interest on her behalf. And as this monster is coming closer to them, and as these people are coming closer to them, she is really starting to kind of question everything that she knows in this life that they have. I will say the pacing of this, Christina Henry does so well with pacing. This is definitely more of a suspenseful story. It is a thriller, and that there is always something happening. You do not really get a moment to breathe in this story, and I will say she does tend to write gore scenes, so if you're not into that, this probably isn't going to be for you. But this also deals with a lot of other kind of things that our main character is struggling with. I don't really want to give too much away, but obviously her husband is not the nicest man, okay? I think we kind of gathered that. So he's not the nicest man, and there are some repressed memories as well. And just like her lifestyle is so limited that whenever she comes in contact with new things, she just like doesn't really understand what to do type thing. So I really enjoyed the overall concept, especially like this mysterious monster that we're just really not sure what to expect from, except for the fact that it is fucking terrifying, okay? We are on a wild run and goose chase all at once, and it is something else. However, I do have to say, even though the pacing of this was just like nonstop, and that's mostly what kept me going, I just felt like I kept waiting for something to happen. I realize that that kind of sounds contradictory, but like, I don't feel like we ever hit the climax. It's just like a thing keeps, this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, but what are we building to? The building of it goes nowhere, I feel. The other shoe never drops kind of deal. I felt like I just kept waiting for something to happen and something to really shock me and for something to really stick out and be like, this is a moment in this story. And it just never happened. It just felt like a lot of suspense scenes just kind of stitched together to create this really fast-paced story. But for what? There's, in the ending is also incredibly unsatisfying. So not only do we never get the climax, we also don't even get like an end to any of it. I was just really let down in the overall execution of it. I just wanted, I think, just a little more substance for the story to grip me with. It felt very surface level of some of the darker topics and deeper topics that it could have explored. So I don't know, I just felt like even the moment that we worked up to just wasn't enough to all the effort that we took to get there, essentially. So I am giving this 3 stars. It was enjoyable in that, like, I could get through it. I was excited to see what was going to happen next. I just am really disappointed in the fact that, like, where was the story? You know? Like, where was it? We're doing a lot of running around. Where do we connect? So unfortunately, Christina Henry does tend to either, like, I really love her things or I find them quite mediocre. So I guess this one just wasn't for me. Hopefully she'll come out with something that would redeem her yet again for me. That tends to be the way. We are on a roller coaster together. Next is Comfort Me with Apples, and this is a really short book, and I went into this knowing absolutely nothing. I actually went into most of the books this month knowing absolutely nothing about them, which is my favorite way to go into books. Basically, I just kind of like had heard of them, had heard some praise about them, and thought, oh, I'll see what that's about, you know? So I don't really feel like I can say too much about this because it is so short without giving a lot of it away. But this is about a woman who lives in a very perfect neighborhood and everything is oh so lovely. And she was made for her husband and he loves her so. And then she finds a brush that is not hers in their house. And then she starts finding other things in their house that are not hers and may belong to some other woman or woman's? That's why does that not sound right? Women. That's why it doesn't sound right. It's been a long week. Here's my English degree. Here it is. Take it from me. There's like something really weird happening in this like perfect little neighborhood, and we don't know if we should trust her instincts, trust her neighbors, trust the things that are happening around her, trust her. Like, things are fucking weird. I was immediately jarred by the writing style because it does feel very sophisticated and very like prim and proper, much like the story. So it kind of jarred me because it just wasn't something that I expected. But once I got into it, I really, really loved this kind of like pretentious type kind of storytelling, as I tend to do, and I just really enjoyed it. I also was not expecting a lot of religious undertones. I now realize that I absolutely should have seen it coming, but I think because my mind doesn't immediately go to religious things, that I was totally blinded by everything that was going to happen in this story. But I thought it was an absolutely fascinating type of story and satire, and I don't even know what else to describe it as. I really enjoyed kind of the conversations that I think that this book could spark, and think that even for such a short book, there is a lot to digest and to sit with and to really consider within this book. I thought it was a fascinating and creative take on this subject matter, and not something that I would originally have thought that I would have enjoyed, and I ended up really loving. This one took me by surprise, snuck up on me, and I really enjoyed it. And I would say if you have a little bit of time, especially I enjoyed the audiobook, if you have a little bit of time, can sit down with this and just like take some time to digest it, I would say give it a try. I ended up giving it a 4.5. It's like a murder mystery, but with like religious allegory, which I never ever would have thought that I would have been into, but here we are. Then we have Tinfoil Butterfly, and this was another one that I knew absolutely nothing about. I saw Kayla from Books and Lala mention it in a TikTok, so I was like, I'm intrigued. I didn't even listen to the rest of the TikTok. I didn't want to know what it was about. She had just said something like it was one of the best books that she had read. So I was like, I'll give it a try. So this is, how do I even explain? This is, the story is fucked up. I'm just going to put it out there. The story is fucked up. I have a whole list of trigger warnings to give you all if you are interested. And basically this is about, this almost feels like a dystopian. I don't think that it is, but the way that it is written is like so very gloomy and eerie, and you just have this constant feeling of death like hanging over the story. Like you never know what's going to be the thing that picks you off. Found out that this woman is hitchhiking and she is trying to go to this destination that her and her stepbrother were going to go to together. And along the way, she ends up coming across this young boy who is wearing a tinfoil butterfly mask, and he needs her assistance with some things along the way. And this is very suspenseful. The writing style in this, it was gritty, but it was also like beautiful at times. It's a lot of these like inner reflective moments that are really poignant to just like everything that's happening, but also just like life itself. And then you kind of have to like sit there and think about these depressing thoughts for a little bit, and it, you know, it is what it is. But there's also this like tiny light, this very itty bitty minuscule tiny light at the end of the story. And you're just working your way there, and you are hoping for the best. And let me tell you, Earl, I fucking love Earl. Like, no wonder we go through all this shit that we do for Earl, because Earl, I love Earl, okay? Amazing. Earl is a little boy who was born a girl, and I love the way that that was handled within the story. There's a lot of deeper talk. I don't even know. I feel like I'm not doing this story justice at all. I can't explain it. But basically, we're running from a lot of hidden dangers within this book, but it's not necessarily always physical ones, but there are a lot of mental ones as well that we are kind of struggling through to get to the end of the story. So the chapters do kind of flip back and forth between the here and the now, and how we are helping Earl in the very terrifying atmosphere that Earl is in, but then also kind of going back to previous time and what has made her kind of go on this exploration, and how she has gotten this way, and looking at herself and growing from that. So the main character isn't always likable, I will say that, and I enjoyed that because there were moments where I was like fighting for her, and other moments where I'm like, I'm sick of her. I'm sick of her, and that's how she feels about herself. So it was interesting that the author made it so that I could go on this roller coaster emotions with this character as well. It is a lot. It is a heavy book, so I would say if you are not quite in the right mental capacity for this book, wait and come back to it. I'm giving this a 4.5. I will say I think the only reason I really didn't give this a full 5 stars is that at times it was a lot. It was almost like the author was just like, what else can I fit in here to make you struggle with? So it did feel like it was almost too much at times, but then again, life is just too much sometimes. The book that I have a full review to tell you about is Where the Drowned Girls Go, which is the 7th in the Wayward Children series. And I will say it took me a minute to realize when I got into this that we were following pre-established characters. Listen, the really bad one was Reagan. I was like 90% through this book before I realized who Reagan was, and I felt really disappointed in myself. Anyway, this one in particular, so the overall series is basically about these magical doors that can open up to mostly kids who feel like they don't belong in our world, and so they go to these other worlds that are better suited for them, and they can decide if they are sure they want to stay there or they can come back, and sometimes their worlds kick them out and they end up back in the normal world. So a lot of these books have struggled with these characters who have been kicked out, who are longing to go back to their world and don't quite fit into our world anymore, and how they deal with that. This one in particular is about a character who has been kicked out of her world. She has gone into another world. Some kind of like demons have followed her back, and she wants them gone. So she decides to transfer from Eleanor's cozy wayward children home, and she is going to go to the Whitethorn institution. So yes, I would consider this a dark academia book, and she is going to try to forget pretty much everything. But when she gets there, it's a nightmare all of its own. So we do get new characters. I always love when we get new characters. We have glimpses into other worlds that we can maybe explore at another point, which I'm very excited about. There are 2 worlds that were mentioned in here. There's like a Halloween-esque world and then like a rat world. I would love to know more about. Just saying. I think this is one of the few that deals mostly just in our world. It doesn't really talk about a lot of the other worlds that much. So that is a little disappointing because I do love learning about the magical worlds. But I really like this. I like that it was a story about individuality and uniqueness. There is a lot of discussion around fat phobia in this book and how that works in today's society and how it is very damaging to someone's self-esteem and character and whatnot, but doesn't take away from them as a person and all this. So there's some really great discussions about that. I just really love the writing style, although I will say sometimes Shauna Maguire's writing I feel not smart enough to comprehend. I have to like reread passages sometimes and I'm like, I don't get it, but I'm gonna move on. I think I understand it enough to continue. So there are sometimes just some confusing bits sometimes, occasionally. I think that her imagery is really good. I love the exploration of just like inner monologues and whatnot, the inner thoughts of what these characters go through and how they feel, especially like as children, because they aren't shown as just like simplistic children. Children have complex thoughts and complex feelings, and it explores those in pretty much every book that we've had in this series so far. I love learning about the worlds. I love learning about the different relationships and friendships and whatnot. So I will say that I think the last 2 I haven't had the best of times with, but this one was a solid 4 for me. I did really enjoy this one. So I am glad that the series is kind of going back up. We've done a little dip and now we're going back up. So this is probably one of my more favorites within the series. And I do have the 3 books that you will need to keep an eye out for my thoughts and feelings. I think that you might be a little surprised by how I feel about these. The first one is Burn for Me, and this is a like kind of a urban fantasy romance, and we follow a girl who is a detective, and she's kind of been put on a suicide mission to go get one of the most powerful mages in town, and if not, she has a lot to lose, but she is basically, you know, has to go hunt him down. He is very dangerous. And along the way, she ends up coming across Connor Mag Rogan, tempting billionaire with equally devastating powers. He is probably one of the most powerful people in the world. However, he's also known for being like a mass killer. Like a weapon. All in himself. So no one has really seen powers like him, and he's kind of a jerk face. So she comes across him and has to work together with him in order to bring down this powerful mage. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and this was something else. I will say that. I will say for fans of Crescent City. Also, The River Has Teeth, which is a mystery, but it also has a lot of fantasy elements mixed in. We follow 2 different girls, one of which her mother has turned into some sort of monster. Her family is known for like magic and whatnot, and something goes wrong and her mother becomes this monster. We also follow this other girl. Her sister has gone missing, and she is on the hunt to figure out what has happened to her sister. So, of course, we don't really know who done did it, but, like, we have one character who is stressing because, like, her mom is a monster, and her mom might be out prowling around at night, okay? So their paths collide when this girl comes to this magical family looking for ways to hunt down her sister and find out what really happened to her sister and what are the lengths that they are going to go to in order to either protect their family or actually give justice. So this is very interesting. This is also a female-female romance, just saying. So, and then the last one is The Wolf of Oren Yarrow. I feel like I just have quite the variety here today, but this is a adult high fantasy that is very politically based. We follow I believe the first printing of this was called The Chronicles of the Bitch Queen, but the printing that I have is The Chronicles of the Wolf Queen. Very interesting. But we follow the queen, and right before she is crowned the queen, her husband just leaves. He abandons her and her son. And he has been gone for 5 years, and then she randomly gets this letter saying that he wants to meet up. And she's like, what the fuck is going on? So her area is constantly on the verge of war, and basically none of the other areas really want anything to do with them. But she has to go into this other territory in order to meet with her husband, figure out what it is that he wants. Is he coming back? What's going on? Where has he been for 5 years? And also kind of navigate the waters of impending war. In lies and treachery and backstabbing and all kinds of other things. There's thieves involved. It's something else. I will say 2 of those were really great reads for me. That's all I'm going to say. That is it for my January wrap-up. I really hope I continue this trend of reading things that really work for me because, like, I'm loving it. I would rather read a shorter amount of things. I'd rather read a smaller amount of things that I really enjoyed this year, I think, than trying to cram in a bunch of things that maybe I don't necessarily care about. But it's all about finding my taste. I feel like my tastes have changed, and finding out what works for me has been kind of difficult lately. So don't forget to subscribe to see future videos from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!